Back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hello again.
Hello again, Steve. And hello to anyone who is listening. And I'm really sorry, we did have a bit of a problem in the start of our last show, which I think might have been something I did. So I'm very, very sorry if you joined us for that. And if you've come back to join us again, thank you so much. Now, as I was trying to say earlier on, this is the Twilight Show, guys. And it's really good to be back. I hope everyone's had a great day. We're getting really near. We've nearly made it, guys, through another academic year. And it really feels like an achievement to have got that far. And I've been looking forward to this show for some time because I've got a gentleman who I've known for, I think must be nearly 25 years now, Steve.
Nearly, yeah.
It's getting that way. So Steve, like myself, is a very experienced teacher. And we're here to have a little bit of a chat, guys, really, because we're interested in how has the profession changed? What have been the challenges? And we all know how challenging it is to be in the profession. And there's some amazing people. I was just thinking last night how lucky I am to be a teacher, because some of the people you meet in this profession are absolutely spot on. Just people who are amazing, people who get out of bed just to make a difference to young people every single day. And when things go wrong, like they did at the start of this, we roll with the punches. And we crack on. So again, thank you so much to anyone who's come back to watch the show. And Steve and I are just going to get into, we don't really know exactly where the conversation's going to go. We're probably going to jump around a few subjects, guys. But once again, if you are watching and you would like to comment, then there should be a comment box, guys, below your screen somewhere. Now, if you put a comment in there, I'll be able to see it. If it's clean and appropriate, I can put it up on the screen, and Steve and I can maybe have a look, and it just gives you an opportunity, guys. Rather than just watching along, you can get involved. Now, as I said, this is the Twilight Show, and this is coming to you through Teachers Talk Radio, guys. Now, have you yet subscribed to our weekly newsletter? So our weekly newsletter on TTR is called Sound Bites and Insights. It's delivered to 10,000 educators a week, contains a curated selection of our 4 standout TTR shows from the week, exclusive discounts even, and exclusive offers from our sponsors. So you can sign up to the Teachers Talk Radio newsletter at the website ttrradio.org/newsletter. While we're talking about podcasts as well, if educational podcasts are your thing, then you need to check out the Chalk and Talk podcast. If you're looking for another great education podcast, it's a great one to check out. It's Anna Stokey, who is the host of that podcast. She's a passionate advocate for evidence-based math education for students of all ages. On her podcast, she talks about everything from effective teaching methods and how-to guides for teaching math facts to tips for evaluating research shows claims. She brings on top-notch guests, educators, researchers, and policymakers, and discusses issues that directly impact teachers and students. Chalk and Talk is for anyone interested in education, so find it wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, so do check that one out, guys. I know that Anna has some great guests on that show, really interesting. And finally, before I get into my chat with Steve, I want to mention that the show is brought to you in partnership. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Now, also, I would say there's on the screen there a code. And if you're listening back, that code is JCTTR2425. And if you use that code on the John Catt Bookshop, you will get yourself 20% off some educational books. Okay, so Steve, how are you feeling? How's it going? What sort of day have you had?
Quite a busy day. I've been out visiting students and the job I'm doing, setting them up for online learning. So it's been a productive day.
Okay, fab, brill. I'm sure a pretty full and hectic day as any sort of role around teaching and supporting students. Now, Steve, recently, if I get anything wrong, can jump in, correct me. But Steve is recently retired. I'm sure you will. Steve is recently retired maths teacher. Steve has been in various roles throughout his career. I know that you were a second in maths. I know that you've been a head of year as well for some time, and I know that you really enjoyed your role as head of year. I've tended to go more academic route, and you sort of ended up going down a more of a pastoral route, didn't you, Steve? With your career direction. So both of us have been in various roles. Steve has been teaching for longer than I have. In fact, it was the first time earlier on tonight that I actually said, when did you start teaching? That's probably something I should have asked you before, really, since I've known you for so long.
It's that preparation. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's the preparation, isn't it? Yeah. You know what they say about preparation. So it's been a bit of a busy day for me as well, guys, with various Ofsted things have gone on. I won't go too deep into that at the moment, but a few things going on at my school as well, as there always is. As we get towards the end of term, there's all sorts of things cropping up, planning for next year and so on. But really, we're here to talk about teaching and how it has changed. So the title I went with, A Life in Teaching, the Changes and the Challenges, because there's certainly been a lot of both of those. Steve and I might get into some, things that have happened to us in our professional lives, the positives and the not so positives. Steve and I do talk an awful lot. We meet quite regularly over coffee, and we do like to sort of talk shop, don't we, Steve?
We do.
But it's really useful to have that and to talk, be open and honest, talking about all sorts of issues that affect us, even sort of coming into mental health and things like that. And it's really handy to have someone who well you can talk to, and you can sort of bounce ideas off of people in that way. So if we think back to when you started teaching, Steve, and obviously you started before me, what sort of things do you think have changed? If we just start, what's really sort of changed in that time that you've been teaching?
I think one of the biggest changes is when you start out 37 years ago, there was very little script. You went in, you knew what you were teaching, you got on with it. Whereas now I think there's a stronger reliance on this is what a lesson looks like. I think that individuality of how you teach and the subject you teach is sadly going. So the teacher isn't so much the person that drives the lesson. And whilst I understand that students have a massive role to play in that, because they're the ones being educated, I think a lot of the teacher's enjoyment of teaching has been taken away.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It certainly felt like when I started, and obviously your career goes back further than mine, but in 2001, I remember that it was very much a case of you were left to your own devices quite a lot, weren't you? It was maybe someone to come in, say, once a year to have a look.
Yeah.
When it came to things like marking, teachers were trusted just to do the job. No one was no one was doing book looks.
Definitely.
In the early 2000s, were they? That just wasn't a thing. It just wasn't. It was unheard of. And the reason I think it's important to talk about these things is there will be teachers who listen to this and watch this later who can't even sort of maybe get their head round some of these differences. You know, when we first started out, you know, I mentioned earlier, we didn't even have email. We didn't have a work email system.
I didn't have the internet at the start.
Well, there you go. Yeah, there you go. There you go. So, I mean, just imagine, you know, think about how much we rely on these things now, you know, to do registers. You know, we can watch a video. I remember the times when you had to queue up a VHS cassette. You had to put it in. And what we did, we had a technician. We were lucky. I mean, science, we're lucky because we could order. I could say to the science technician, I want video number 7. We had a little book with all the videos. Video number 7, track 6. And she would queue it up for me. So I knew that when I put the video in, it would be, you know, it would be where I wanted it to be. But even things like that, and even things like email, you know, if I wanted, you know, if I had a problem with a student in my class, I needed to write a memo, effectively like a memo. Yeah. And we called them greenies, didn't we?
Yeah.
It was a green piece of paper. We wrote the problem, and it was for misbehaviour. So basically, you wrote the greenie. It went into a pigeonhole. We had a whole wall, and I think we still have those in school. We still have pigeonholes in school where people can drop off marking and stuff. But that's how you communicate. If you had an issue with a student, that issue would be dealt with over the course of a week, or, you know, when people got round to get into their pigeonhole to have a look at the memo. So in that sense, in terms of like the administration, it's changed beyond recognition, hasn't it, really?
Of course, they often went in the wrong pigeonhole.
Yeah.
So there are all sorts of problems like that.
Yeah. So it was just, it's just sort of changed beyond recognition. But anyway, picking up on what you said, you're talking about autonomy, really, Steve, aren't you?
Yeah.
It is something, and I think this probably does depend a little bit on the leadership team, because my experience has been where teaching started to change for me, and I've said this before, was around about the late 2000s, which I think was when academies really started to you know, kick off. And I don't know whether that was the driver of it, but I remember I would teach lessons. Someone would come and watch a lesson, and I'd get good. People would say, that's good, keep doing that, you know, maybe think about doing this, but that's good, you know, crack on, keep going, kind of thing. And then I think it was in late sort of towards 2008, 2009, 2010, where someone came in and watched the lesson, and I felt like I'd done what I always do. And they were like, well, actually, that's satisfactory. So it felt like there was a shift around about that time. I mean, what I would say for balance is I do think the standard of teaching has improved in terms of, well, it probably varied more from teacher to teacher. There was less scrutiny. So I think the variation in sort of the standards of the teaching and what the students were getting was very different, don't you think? At the time. So
I mean, I'd say the way things are delivered have improved. I think let's be honest, 30 odd years ago, there was a lot of turn to page 47, do these 30 questions. And I think we've moved away from that. And I think that is a massive positive. There's always room for that, don't get me wrong, but I think the way things are delivered has certainly changed. Because, I mean, you've got PowerPoints, you've got far more interaction, you've got far more students being involved rather than sit there going with these questions, which was the staple diet of education at one point.
Yeah. And I remember learning maths when I was at high school. We worked through, what they called SMP books. Or was that middle school?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
SMP books.
Yeah. So we worked through these books, and basically you'd work through, and every now and again, if the teacher felt like everyone was struggling with a particular problem, you'd stop the class, maybe go through a couple of examples, and then you'd just crack on. But you basically worked at your own speed, didn't you? I think the idea was you worked through at your own speed. There was very little sort of teacher-led learning when I was, that was when I was at high school. And yeah, whereas now I think we've moved a lot more towards the teacher leading the learning, but then maybe it depends on the school. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think you're right in saying that now there is a bit more of a top-down sort of approach, isn't there, in terms of, you know.
I mean, it goes as far as some schools have like a PowerPoint everyone uses.
Yeah.
Everyone has to use that structure of a lesson. And you're thinking in terms of, for a teacher, that's not very exciting. And for a student who's got to sit there for 5 hours or however many a day, having lesson after lesson, and that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and that's aside before you start thinking about the physical issue of a kid staring at a screen for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're doing. I mean, what we have in our rooms now are basically big TV screens that are fully, I mean, brilliant. They're amazing pieces of kit, what we've got at the moment. You know, we've moved away from the data projectors and we've just got big TV screens, and they're brilliant. They're amazing to use. You can write on them. But like you say, it's the diet is very same, isn't it? I mean, for me as a teacher, I feel my expertise is I know the students better than anybody. That's my job. I teach those students. I know the needs. I've looked at their what we call passports now, that used to be called IEPs years ago, and they've had the name change, or EHCP if a student's got the EHCP. But I know my job is to know those students and to know what will work with those students, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to use what someone else has produced, because 9 times out of 10, I don't know if you find this, Steve, if someone says, right, here's the PowerPoint, I'll look at it and you think, I don't want to teach it like that. I know a way that I want to teach it that will work for those kids. And then I'll teach it how I think it should be taught.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I totally get what you're saying. I think that the professionalism, you know, our job is that we prepare the lesson and we do it in a way, we adapt the lesson, which we now call adaptive teaching. And again, it used to be called differentiation, another change, right? It's now adaptive teaching. But that's our job, isn't it? Because I don't want to teach how someone else does. And I think if someone tells me how to do it, I almost think, well, why do you need me then?
Yeah.
Why do you need a professional? Because that's not teaching, that's presenting, lecturing or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think there has to be a certain amount, and it depends on the thing, on the situation, because something that we've done recently is we now have a task. Well, it's called a do now, but we have a very specific way that we have to do it in the first 5 minutes of the lesson. But we're not dictating what has to happen for the rest of the lesson. We're just saying the first 5 minutes, this is, you know, they've not even said the screen needs to look a particular way. They've just said, this is the task you want. And it's really what we need at the moment in our school for the various issues that we've had in our school is we need something that will settle, something that will get them in, something that is an easy win that will get the students in and focused on some learning from the word go. And I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
But I don't want my whole lesson sort of dictated.
No.
So yeah. So I know what you're saying. So I mean, like we've said, changes for the good, and changes that maybe are a little bit more sort of frustrating. So that sort of changes in terms of, you know, the expectations on us. Like I said, it does feel like, because there's a balance, isn't there? We've got to be trusted as professionals to some extent. We are employed as a professional, so we don't need hand holding all the time. But what sometimes I worry about is that we taught in a time when we would be doing lessons completely from scratch. We wouldn't have a PowerPoint. I mean, the best thing I had, you know, when I first started, it was OHPs. I didn't use a lot of blackboards. I might ask you about what using a blackboard was like, Steve, if you used one. I don't actually go back quite as far as that. Sorry, mate. But yeah, it's the best I had for like a real plan for a lesson was I had an acetate ready to go that I could put up that I'd done before. But what my point is, we were doing lessons completely from scratch, which means that we could teach a lesson with a, with a whiteboard and a whiteboard pen. But obviously that is a skill that new teachers may not need. Although I know that some trainers, people who are training teachers, are putting them in a position where they have to do that to improve their skills. So how did you find that back in the days when you just had a piece of chalk and a blackboard?
We had a rolling blackboard.
Yeah, the old-fashioned rolling ones.
So you literally just kept writing on it.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to wait until everyone had done one bit before you could roll the thing around to do another bit. And it was quite hard to write with chalk, because keeping the board clean was quite difficult.
Yeah.
All dusty and whatever else. No, I wouldn't go back to it.
No. And I think that's the thing. It's difficult. But then I think when you go very PowerPoint, I think we've become very reliant on PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And I always find, I don't know about you, if I've got, say, 10 slides is my ideal sort of PowerPoint length.
Yeah.
If you've got more than 10 slides, that's a presentation. That's not a lesson, in my opinion. I mean, you can obviously do a lot more video clips, animations, and so on. For science, that's very helpful because some of what we're teaching isn't tangible. So we're talking about particles and, things that kids have to try and imagine. And I find that kids don't always have the best imagination for these things. So being able to show them something on the screen does help.
It's sad, really, isn't it?
The lack of imagination. Yeah, that's something that bothers me, because I always think when it comes to reading a book, how do you find sort of students when it comes to reading? I find kids really struggle with reading, and I know that you've done a lot of one-to-one, which I haven't done.
Yeah.
So what are you finding if you're like working with someone who's really struggling? Are you finding that reading is a problem? What sort of problems are you finding when you work with the students you work with?
You'll find some need things read to them, so they'll have to use some sort of package to have things read. You have issues with font size. You have issues with color backgrounds. There's all sorts of different problems get in the way. But as a general picture, I'm finding from school as well, the number of students that read is minute. Because you'd have in school, you'd have your form period, and you'd have sometimes like a reading morning, which should be a nice thing.
Yeah.
But the amount that do not have a book, so you have like a book box, but they just get a book out and then just have it on their desk to then put back again to get a different one next time. This love of reading. You got students that love reading, and I think so many of them just see it as a chore, which is going back to the imagination thing. I think less reading takes away some of that imagination.
I think it does. I think, and like you say, this actually really does worry me when I start thinking about this, because reading a book, I don't read enough, if I'm honest. So it's something that probably I should do more often, because it is very different to watching to screen time, isn't it? Let's face it, screen time, too much screen time just is. There's so many studies that have shown this for various different reasons. Too much screen time isn't good, but it does worry me, the lack of reading. I mean, it's difficult to get students to read, like you say, and it should become. And as time goes on, I really worry. I mean, I did some reading today, and what we do at the moment, which I think kind of works better than trying to force students to read individually, is we read a book together now.
Yeah.
So we've got a book that we read, and I read it aloud. So most of the time it's me reading it, which allows me to sort of, as I go through, I can explain things. We can talk about the story because we've all read the same sort of part. Yeah. I can try and make it sort of interesting or put my own spin on it or whatever. Sometimes the students will read as well. And that's interesting, making students read aloud as well, because then you can sort of get a feel for the fact that, well, how good or not so good their reading is, which is, again, very interesting. I think we tend to assume that all students can read well, and I don't think that's always the case,
No.
of course. But yeah, the imagination thing, because what I think a lot of what we're losing is this idea that when you read a book, it happens in your head, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think I sometimes feel a bit sad for the kids, the young people who don't get to experience that. If I read a book, and you read the same book, you're going to see it differently to me. In your mind, you're going to, you're going to generate images of these characters in this book that will be totally different to the ones that are in my mind. And I just think that's really amazing when you think about that. Because if you watch a film, it's someone else's interpretation of a book normally, isn't it? Quite often films are based on books or literature or whatever, and it's someone else's interpretation. So that is something that does worry me, this, the reading ability of kids. And I think that does really impact on a lot of things.
But I think that goes alongside with how students have become more and more spoon-fed and less independent. Because I'm thinking when I was at school, which is a few years ago, you just got on with it. I don't remember revision classes. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with revision classes, but part of me does think when you put a revision class in, it's almost like a substitute for the work in the lesson, not an add-on.
Yeah.
And why are we having those revision classes? Is it to bump up results, or is it to support the students?
Yeah.
It's a question worth asking. But whereas we should be trading the wrong word, but getting the students to revise themselves and how they do it. And they do have to get on with it, rather than we provide these revision classes to replace that. Like it's some great fix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. We're doing a lot for them. And I think the other thing is we do live in an age where it's instant gratification, isn't it? So if I want to know, I don't know, if I want to do some revision on evolution and I don't know what it is, within 2 seconds I can bring up a video that a teacher has recorded, which is going to tell me what it is. If I want, I don't know, the TikTok thing, I don't want to sound too much like a grumpy old man here, but if you watch a TikTok any more than normal, Steve, but if you watch a TikTok, it's, I don't know, what is it, a minute? I don't really have TikTok. I only got it on my phone to see if I was on it anywhere for any of the schools I've worked at before. I'm thinking, I wonder if anyone's put me on there, but I couldn't find myself. I don't know if I was disappointed about that or not. Probably not really. But I mean, it's just a short clip, isn't it? What I'm getting at is it's instant gratification. I'm going to watch this little clip. And if the students are laughing about something, and I don't always get what they're laughing at because there's these trends. It's usually TikTok, and usually it goes over my head. And sometimes I ask my kids because they tell me occasionally what it's, skippity toilet and all that stuff. And I'm like, what's that mean? So I go and do some research and I ask my kids. But my point is, it's very quick, isn't it? It's very instant gratification, just a silly little meme or something like that. There's no you don't have to watch an entire sort of comedy show or something. It's just society has changed a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I used to sit and watch, when I was at university, we used to go and watch The Simpsons. That's when they were making brand new episodes of The Simpsons. So I don't know what day of the week it was, but that was a highlight of my week. I'd go and watch The Simpsons, but I'd have to go at a particular time, sit down, watch it for an hour. And I'm not saying that kids can't sit down and watch a film, because they do. But it's just, things have changed quite a lot. And it sometimes worries me because that side of life has changed, but we're still expecting kids to do exams. And that's maybe something that I think might be different as well, because now kids in science, there's 6 papers that they have to do for their GCSE, and someone in their infinite wisdom, again, if I compare when I was at school, I did modular, science, for example, where it was multiple choice answers. So about half of the course was just little multiple choice tests. It wasn't all external exam, and you could resit them a few times.
Yeah, I remember that.
Obviously, we used to have coursework in science as well, which was about 25% of the grade, which is gone. So my point is, it's like we've made education centered very much about written exams.
Yeah.
But students are losing those skills where you've got to read a question. I think a lot of marks are getting lost because students aren't reading questions properly.
Yeah.
I mean, do you find that? Obviously, you must get a real insight when you work one-to-one, because I'm terrible with one-to-one. I can stand in front of a class of 30, but if I sit down with one student, I find that really intense, and I'm not used to it. I find it a bit strange. So what are you finding? Any of these things are really, things like exam technique and reading the question properly, is that something that you think is really impacting on?
I think you've got quite a few students like not showing method, just going for the gratification, put the answer down, not reading questions is a definite. So yeah, I don't really know what else to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, but that's symptomatic maybe of this idea that they don't have the skills, like you said, because we're doing a lot for them, aren't we?
Yeah.
Basically, we spend 5 years doing quite a lot for them, helping them, which is what we should do, obviously.
Yeah.
Then we're like, all right, off you go then. You've now got, I don't know, is it like 25? I was trying to work out how many papers your GCSE students had to do.
Too many.
It's like 20, something like 25, I think. 25 papers in the space of what, 6 weeks or something?
Yeah.
So it's ridiculous, isn't it? When you actually break down what that is, it's ridiculous. So,
I mean, you think they go on to do A level or course, and they've done possibly 10 GCSEs.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah, education is studying different things that maybe wouldn't meet any other time. But you have to ask yourself, do they need 10 GCSEs? Isn't it better for them to reduce that?
Yeah.
So that you can have a GCSE where you go into more detail that's not quite as prescriptive as it is at the moment. Because curriculums are too big. And we know we were talking about science. I know I've got friends who are science teachers. The curriculum in science is far too big, particularly for students that find it a struggle. And you said 6 exams, that's a massive commitment.
Yeah,
and
it really is.
For a lot of those students, they don't need that depth of science. And I think it's got to be looked at and made more accessible to students, because 25 exams in how many weeks? Right,
I don't know. It is. I don't know whether there's any appetite. It doesn't feel like there is. And it's something that I've said before. It feels like often the system is there to measure us more than it is to measure students.
Yeah.
I mean, I've mentioned this like on X a few times. I got to university because I did a BTEC alongside my A-levels, and my A-levels were modular. So I remember resitting the same chemistry exam several times. So it was modular.
Yeah.
But also I had the BTEC alongside that had no exams at all. It was entirely coursework and project-like type work. So my point is, why can't we do that at GCSE? My two daughters have been through college. They've both done a high national diploma because their A-levels, their GCSEs weren't quite good enough to do A-level, but they were accepted into a college where they were able to do a high national diploma, which is equivalent to an A-level. And now both of them are going to university.
She's absolutely brilliant.
Well, I mean, I never thought that would happen because they struggled with their GCSEs. And I think there's probably a myriad of reasons why. I mean, my eldest really struggled academically. I think she might have even had some undiagnosed needs. I don't even know. But she was very immature for her age. I just don't think she was ready. as well. And that's the other thing. And we mentioned this earlier, didn't we? That we've got, because science is so big, we start teaching it in year 9 because that's the only way you're going to fit it into the time, the curriculum time. So they're then having to remember stuff they've done when they, 3 years ago. So it just seems a bit strange. Just some of the things, we seem to have lost our way a bit, don't you think, in terms of like how we examine kids? What are we doing it for the right reasons? Are we doing? I don't know. It doesn't seem like a great way to go.
I mean, linked to that, I mean, you've got students who have to stay in school until the exams have started. Now, if I was a parent of a child that age, I mean, my son's 4, so therefore he's not really there yet. But I'd want my child to stay at home in the quiet, revising. I wouldn't want my child to sit in a history lesson when they've got a maths exam coming up.
No.
I mean, I know why they're doing it. They're doing it because of students who aren't going to work at home.
Yeah.
But linked to that is it's about results and the danger of those students not achieving their targets because they're not going to put in the effort at home. But in return, the students who want to be at home, who want to get on with their work, are being forced to be in school.
Yeah. Well, this is something I've wondered about for a long, long time. And I don't know where the pressure comes on leaders, because most schools seem to do the same thing, don't they? Where they keep them in. And I don't know whether it's an attendance figures thing. I'd probably need to speak to someone who's sort of in the know about this. Why are leaders making this? If there's someone listening who leads a school and who can give us an answer, but why are they doing it? Is it purely because of outcomes they want to show? Are they worried what parents will think if they say, right, you're all on study leave? I mean, I remember, and again, I don't know how well, I think this is an attendance issue as well. I think I remember someone saying this to me, but we used to have a system where during the lesson time, when the lesson was timetabled, they could come in if they wanted to. So you could say to them, right, at this time, there's going to be...
Yeah, which is fair enough. Yeah.
You can come in. I think someone might have told me there was some kind of safeguarding issue with that. I don't know. But the bottom line is, it does feel like we're doing that for the wrong reasons. We're doing it with good intentions, but we're getting it wrong because we're not doing what's best for the kids and their health and well-being. Yeah,
I mean, as you say, provide it for those that want to do it, but it is counterproductive. And if it is to, I use the word massage the attendance figures, then why are we putting that ahead of a child's education?
Yeah. And again, I mean, I suppose the other thing is the attendance thing will rumble on and on and on, won't it? And that's another thing that worries me, because it's a bit of an obsession that we have. And I can understand, to be fair, why leaders worry about it, because Ofsted do pay a lot of attention to attendance figures, and I don't know, and there's a lot of pressure. It feels like schools are under an enormous pressure to get those students in. Parents will get fined if students don't go in, and so on. And again, you can understand that. Of course, school is the best place for them to be. That's where they should be. But I don't know. It seems to have become a bit of an obsession, and it puts pressure on leaders. And I think it makes leaders make the right decisions that aren't the best for the students sometimes.
I mean, because we talked about mental health, didn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking at some statistics on this, and in 2023, it was estimated that over 20% of students were struggling with mental health.
Yeah. In 2023,
And also, students with mental health are 7 times more likely to miss 15 plus days a term.
Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe to an extent, it's a bit of a catch-22. you're trying to help students, but really you're not doing the best for their mental health, which is then ironically leading them to not be in school. I mean, I would agree, students aren't. This is the least happy. I don't think students are as happy in school as they used to be.
No. Well, whereas I think the pastoral support in school is the best it's ever been.
Yeah,
that's one thing in the school that's certainly got miles better. I'm not saying that was because I was a year ahead, but just the seeing students as individuals. But that is a tiny bit of the school that is then overridden by attendance figures, is then overridden by everything else. And I think we've got to make a bigger thing of that and think, has a school, I mean, you said about students being unhappy. I mean, I would go with that. I really would go with that. And I think if you did a survey of students, I think people would be scared what they saw.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel it. And I think the issue is, and I might try and do a show about this at some point, the transition from primary to secondary is a massive, massive problem. Yeah. I think students are really struggling when they go from year 6. I mean, they're in a group, they've got the same teacher all day pretty much. Maybe there's a few specialists coming in to do PE and whatever. And then they go into, I mean, this is always, we've done this for years. We haven't done anything differently. Schools aren't doing anything fundamentally differently for transition, are they? If anything, we're doing more than we have done. But my point is, they seem to not be coping with that transition like they used to. And I don't know if it links to when I was talking to Scott Lyons a while back, he was talking about sort of mental age and the fact that a lot of these students, a couple of years because of COVID, were a couple of years below their mental age. If that makes sense. Although, sorry, mental age was below their chronological age, is what I'm trying to say. So, whether that's a factor as well, they're just not ready for secondary school. They don't have the tools to deal with it in the same way as they used to for some reason. But again, there's probably all sorts of reasons there. I think what we'll do, because we started a bit late, guys, we missed the first 10 minutes. So thank you to everyone who's joined us. We've got a few people who have joined us, saying we've got a bit of a collection of people who have come to join us this evening. Thank you so much for doing that, guys. Remember, if you want to put a comment in, there should be a comment box underneath your screen if you want to get involved with that. Steve and I are probably just going to go a little bit over the scheduled hour because we'd only have about 6 minutes. So if it's all right with you, Steve, we'll do a little bit longer. I think we're okay until about 7:30 before the next show is coming on TTR. Yeah. So we're on Teachers Talk Radio, guys. And before we get into our next little section, I just want to mention to you guys about the TTR newsletter, and whether, if you haven't subscribed to it yet, then that's something that is well worth doing. The newsletter for Teachers Talk Radio is called Sound Bites and Insights. If you'd like to sign up to it, you need to go to the TTR website, ttrradio.org/newsletter. This show, of course, is sponsored by the John Catt Bookshop, guys. So if you'd like to do a little bit of professional development, then it's well recommended to go and have a look at the John Catt Bookshop. And if you look at the screen there's a code. And in case you're listening on the podcast, that code is JCTTR2425. And if you go over to the John Catt Bookshop, you can get yourself 20% off your order. So do check that out, guys. Some great authors and some great professional development books on there. Okay, so, right. We've gone through a few topics. I just wanted to talk, and I don't know in how much depth I'm going to go into this, Steve, but let's have a little talk about teacher mental health, shall we? Yeah. Let's have a little think, because I know Steve and I, as I've said earlier on, go back, nearly 25 years now. We've known each other, and both sort of professionally and personally, lots of things have gone on in that time, haven't they? But in terms of the professional part of it, I think, like I said, it's really important to talk about those times that things haven't been so good. So in terms of just mentioning I don't want to sort of bring anyone down with this, but I think it is something that's important to talk about because things do get tough in schools. I think the toughest time for me in my career, we were at the same school. We're not going to mention the name of the school where Steve and I met, but it was a village school. And I think it was in an area where not many people moved. We can say it's in Norfolk, can't we? So we taught at a Norfolk school, and my feeling was I did get to a stage where I felt like I could do a bit more. But the problem I had in terms of Norfolk schools, and I don't know if you found this as well, Steve, is people don't move a lot. People get into a role that they like, that they're comfortable in, and they don't move around a lot. So I ended up moving further south. Again, I'm not going to narrow it down too much. But I moved south towards the southern part of East Anglia, and I've sort of relocated down here in the last 6 years. But my first sort of promotion was at a school that was an academy. I'd gone from teaching in a state school, because at the time the school we were at was a state school, and I went over to an academy. And I think that change from working in that academy environment back in sort of 2012, it was a bit of a culture shock, in all honesty, because suddenly there was a real emphasis. There was an awful lot more scrutiny. At the time there, it was quite common for people observing your lesson to give you a grading. They were grading lessons. I don't know if you remember that, Steve. And this particular school had a policy where they would come and see you and you had to get a good grade in. Basically, if you didn't get a good grade in, they'd watch you again. And if you still didn't get it, they'd start to turn up the heat on you, let's say.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably my lowest point in my career. I love my job, and I know that you do as well, Steve. But that was the time. I think that was the closest where I came to saying, nah, this isn't worth it. But fortunately, I came through that. I got to the end of that. And I suppose what I'm trying to sort of say in a roundabout way is, we do need to speak out. One thing I've learned as a teacher, as I've got older, I went through that phase where I felt like I couldn't ask for help. Have you ever been in that position?
Yeah. When you get the comments like, if you can't teach here, you can't teach anywhere.
Yeah, and all the old classics get rolled out, don't they?
Yeah.
So I remember having a real problem with a year 7 class. So someone just said, "Oh, year 7? Why are you struggling with year 7?" And that was about that. That was the extent of the advice that I got from that particular head of faculty or whatever. It was like, "Oh, you're struggling with year 7," and that.
I don't have a problem with them. Yeah.
Yeah, and the old classics,
comments like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they behave for me, and the whole and all of that. But I think we've got through the other side of that. And again, it might depend where you work. People talk about multi-academy trusts, and there's upsides and downsides to it. We could get really into it talking about that. But my point is, it was a real culture shock at the time. The expectation was very high. It felt like you couldn't ask for help. Whereas more recently, I had a class where I've got to a stage in my career now where I'm confident enough I can say to leadership, this isn't working. This class isn't working. There's no way that I'm going to be able to work with this class and get them in a position where I can teach them. Because my point is, it's better to say that. And to be fair, the people who I said that to, they sorted it out. And kudos to them. They listened. They sorted it out. And I found that, I've maybe been a little bit lucky. I tend to sort of gravitate towards challenging schools for some reason. But I've found that in those challenging schools, the people who are there, the leaders, are spot on, and everyone pulls together. And that's, I think, the good thing about a challenging environment is people do pull together. And when you have a school that does that, it helps. But yeah, that was the thing that I think really worried me. It felt to me like I couldn't ask for help, because asking for help felt like an admission that I couldn't do my job.
Yeah.
So what are your feelings on that, Steve, in terms of like being managed? Has there ever been times when, obviously without naming specifics, but has there been times when management have kind of made your life difficult?
I'd say, can I mention lesson observation? Or is that off?
Yeah, you can mention lesson observation.
Okay. I remember teaching a statistics lesson. It's a mixed ability group. And we were doing normal distribution, which you obviously do in science, which is a difficult concept to get around. And I taught that in lesson observation, and it was anything from a grade 9 student to a grade 3/4 student. And they left the room, they all understood it. Did the PowerPoints, did all that, did the working with them. And I thought it was a decent lesson, even though I say it myself. And it got slated because it didn't tick the boxes it needed to tick. Now, to me, as a teacher, surely you're teaching understanding.
Yeah, 100%.
And they understood it. Yet, because I didn't do it in a certain way, it was slated. And that to me in education triggered something in my head. And as I say, I'm not teaching now, but that day I think was the start of me thinking I want to do something else.
Yeah.
Because that took away from me everything while you're doing the job. Relationships with students and them understanding what you're putting across.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's all about what the outcome is for those students.
Yeah.
And I remember that being a bit of a buzzword as well. It's the learning that matters, not the teaching.
Yeah.
If you remember that being a thing, which actually it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, like I was saying earlier, we know our kids. Our job is to know our kids and to know what works with them and to get them by whatever means we feel necessary to a point where they understand something. And if we can prove that they've understood it, and show, I mean, it's not all about showing that they've understood it, obviously, but again, there's that balance of the kids learning and then our need to sort of demonstrate that impact of the learning and so on. A good observer, a skilled observer should be able to see the difference. We have had a comment. We have, and I'm just going to see if I can put it on. I'm just checking the spelling. See if it's no joking. I'm just checking to see if we can put it up. So I'm just going to put it up. So thank you, Paul. Paul Foz, who's come in and put a comment. At the moment, my DHT told me that she didn't believe my performance as a rabbit after reading. Oh, hold on. I've disappeared. After reading observation, so she marked me down. That was the moment I decided to move on and find better things. I now have a school and team who support each other. All right. So again, somebody who's, one particular comment, one particular piece of feedback, really can have an impact. And obviously it's important as an observer, you are going to get scrutinized. We are accountable as teachers. We are public servants. So we do have that accountability factor. But yeah, I do think we lost our way. I felt, in my experience, education lost its way sometime around the late sort of 2000, like 2010s, around that time. And it was where the academy system really came in. And I'm not saying I have an issue with the academy system. I think what I'm saying is it then became a different emphasis. It felt like you were accountable in more ways. Yeah. To see what I mean? You weren't just accountable to the students and parents. You were also accountable then to this big corporate body. And it felt more like, you were working under this big corporate entity.
But also, it was this idea of schools being a business.
Yeah.
School's not a business.
No, they're not.
Never has been, never should be.
No, they're not. I remember a head of faculty sitting us down in a meeting and saying, right, we need to treat the students like they're our clients. I'm thinking, no, we don't. No, we don't. we are their teachers. We are responsible for their well-being. We have effectively parental powers while they're in our care. Yeah. We have a duty of care. But that's
for some of them, it's the safest place, isn't it?
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we have that incredible sort of responsibility in terms of a duty of care. But to say that there are clients, I think, is a little bit wide of the mark, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that kind of led, I don't know, that's something that I've discussed before in terms of then parents having an expectation that they can not dictate, but not always accept the school using its own policies, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I think there are. I'm not having to go at parents at all. I'm a parent. You're a parent. It's hard to be a parent. I'm not for a minute having a go at people, because most of the parents I deal with are absolutely spot on, in all honesty. Yeah. But we do have the occasional problem where someone thinks that they can dictate. And then we have a head teacher who seems to want, and this again came out of my discussion with Scott Lyons several weeks back, where he said he feels like some head teachers are sort of dancing to the tune of the parents a little bit in some schools and in some situations. And then you get this situation where someone goes to the press. I've seen I've seen things in the press today about a young lady wearing a particular outfit with
with the Union Jack on.
Union Jack, and which in of itself is not a problem, is it? But I think there is a lot more to the story, let's say. So
I don't think we know all the facts.
I think that's something that's gone to the press, and it's something that's gone huge. It's just gone completely out of control. But all of that is negative for that school, isn't it? That school then has to deal with that. Those students, those leaders, the teachers in that school are having to deal with this enormous sort of negative press now. And actually, I don't know, what's that achieved?
But I remember the days of head teachers that if you did get it wrong, and we all get it wrong, would publicly and to the parents back you up, and then have that quiet word with you saying, I think you got it wrong there.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I don't think that necessarily happens.
No, I think you're right. I think it's right that parents have a voice, and they have channels where they can, and I think that's very powerful. And I think having that relationship, that relationship between the parent and the student and the school is incredibly powerful. As you'll know, as you'll know, you would have dealt in your times as head of year, you would have dealt with that a lot more than I have. I mean, I find contacting parents very difficult. It's something that I find takes an awful lot out of me. It's not something I'm great at doing, if I'm honest, but it's probably something that you've done with a lot more. But there is a lot of power for that to do good.
Yeah.
But it can sometimes go the other way. I've been in meetings. I was called into a meeting once where someone said, we've got this parent in, parent X. They just want to ask you a couple of questions about what happened in your lesson last week. And a little alarm bell flashed, and I thought, and there was part of me that said, maybe I shouldn't go to that meeting. I did go to the meeting. And I then had to sit there while that parent basically told me all of the things I was doing wrong. And that wasn't very pleasant, to be honest, because it was very much, it wasn't a very sort of pleasant interaction, in all honesty. But we move on from that. But it's just, I think what I'm trying to say is that relationship with parents is really important.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that support of that teacher, and I do think we lost our way in education. I do think common sense is coming back in. I really do. But it's very much dependent on who you work with, the team you work with. I think we're getting a very good team together at the moment. Where
that makes a massive difference.
It makes a huge difference, especially the people you work with in your faculty. And that's why I said that's one of the amazing things about being a teacher is most teachers are just amazing people, because they've got dedication, they've got patience. They've, well, can't speak for all teachers, but it's just when you work with good people, it just makes the whole thing a pleasure. And obviously, if you work,
I think if you've got a line manager who you respect, who leads from the front,
yeah,
you're more likely to do things rather than go,
yeah, definitely.
Because you're supporting them as well as them supporting you.
Yeah, and I think you'll work for people. So there's a balance between cracking the whip and saying, right, I need you to do this, I need you to rate the game. But if people buy into what you're doing, if good teachers buy into what leaders are saying, they'll crawl over broken glass for those leaders.
Yeah,
they really will, because they know, good teachers know good leadership when they see it, and they know how powerful that is and how transformative that is for students, especially students sort of in difficult circumstances. So we're probably getting towards the end of our time, Steve.
It's gone too quick.
It's gone really quick. It's been amazing to talk to you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for your time. I know it's obviously never easy to give up your time when you are obviously not in teaching, but I know that you have a lot sort of going on in terms of your tutoring and so on, and you're driving around and supporting various people. So I just want to sort of thank Steve for giving up his time this evening. I'd like to thank anyone who's joined in. We have had a few people in. We've got 74 people in at the moment.
Wow.
That's been up and down throughout the broadcast, even with the issues that we had at the start. So if you did try and join us in that first one that we had to cut short, I apologize, guys. I think it was possibly something I did with the technology. Yeah, well, let's just assume it was. I'm a teacher. Let's face it, I'm a teacher. We don't know how to use technology. I remember that always used to make me laugh, actually, when I was at primary. I remember primary school. I always used to wonder, why can teachers never use technology? They never use the video, And then I became a teacher and I realized what it was. It's just things go wrong, don't they? things are going to go wrong when you most need them, and that's just how it works. So thanks if you came back in.
And can I just add?
Please do.
You must remember the days when you had to wheel a TV around the science department.
Yeah. Yeah. Those were the days. Those were the days. Getting out the big TV. They knew it was going to be a good lesson once the big TV came out.
No one else had one apart from science.
No. We had all the That's true. Probably. I think you probably had one hanging from the ceiling in the great big huge bracket.
Yeah.
Do you remember the huge TV?
Yeah.
So you young people who are listening, we remember when the TVs were so big you could hardly pick them up.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on Teachers Talk Radio. Hope you've all had a great day. I'd like to wish everyone a really, really happy and well-deserved summer holiday.
Definitely.
We've almost made it through another academic year. So to all teachers out there and all partners of teachers, because you guys are unsung heroes as well. Thank you for all of your hard work over this last year, guys. That's it from Steve and myself. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And that's it from us, guys. Have a lovely evening and see you next time here on the Twilight Show. Good evening, everyone.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.